In this video, I'm going to be covering the 3 biggest problems with mods in Destiny 2, as well as a way to fix said problems. If at any point you disagree with me, please leave a comment below. I would really like to know what y'all think about the modding situation in Destiny. As far as I see it, I've narrowed down my thoughts about mods and the problems with them into these 3 categories. Artifact mods are too intrusive, there is almost no consistency between mods, and synergizing with teammates is almost impossible. So let's get into the first one. Artifact mods are too intrusive. Artifact mods come in and break your builds either due to cost, slots, or requirements such as champion mods. Basically, the gist of what I'm trying to say about the artifact being too intrusive is that, in my perspective, the artifact should be something that is on top of your current already established build that you've been working on and, honing over time. But the way it is in game right now is the artifact mods basically replace your build, either due to the cost, the slots, or the requirements of the activity. So, requirements of the activity, this is the best example. So, in this season, Bungie just added stasis armor, and with stasis armor, they added stasis mods. Let's look at the arms. So, they added the grenade and melee stasis mods that go in the second and third column. Each of these basically refund some of those grenade or melee energy once you use those abilities. But what happens when you go into like a Nightfall or a Nightmare Hunt or something with champions in it? You need to have champion mods on, or you need to be using one of the exotics, one of the few exotics that have champion mods on. So you're basically giving up those new stasis mods to get the champion mods. And let's be honest, most people are not running just Ariana's Vow, Divinity, Leviathan's Breath, etc., Lament. People are going to put those mods on their, like anti-barrier, like auto rifles. You effectively need to put these on. So not only are these mods taking up the slots, but they're also like necessary to actually complete the activity. And the necessity of it is what facilitates taking up the slots. So that's what I'm talking about. It's intrusive. The artifact comes out and bam, it knocks down your door. It says, no, I'm going to be used and this is how you're going to be using me and putting me in your mod slots. While we're here, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button. So assuming that artifact mods are too intrusive, and you may disagree, if you do, please leave a comment. I would really love to hear your perspective, and that would be very insightful on my part. But as far as I see it, I think artifact mods are too intrusive. So I want to cover 3 solutions that I've formulated and some of the community has been talking about in murmurings here and there. So one of the ideas that's sort of been floating out there in the community is to make all the artifact mods that you unlock always active at all times. Now, I assume that this is under the circumstances that we currently have, where you can only have 12 of the mods unlocked, and the certain distribution of like what columns you can unlock and stuff like that. And I assume, well, this would also make mod costs go away because they're always just active, they're on the artifact. So there's that. So there's something I like about this. There's a few things I like about this. One of them being that this actually kind of already goes into the current design of the artifact. You have to reset the artifact with a cost each time you want to reset it. It sort of is like a progression skill tree outside of your character. And then also you can only have 12 mods unlocked. So the 12 mods and the cost of resetting sort of goes into this thing of like, okay, I want to get my skill tree to look like this so I get these effects. It's sort of like that MMO sort of like design of setting your character up for the following combat or whatever. It's good in the sense that 12 mods, it's going to limit you, so you can't just have all the effects active at once. That's to balance out like what decisions you actually make when you're selecting your mods. And this actually puts a lot more impactful nature, because if all mods are active at the same time that you have selected, that means that you could combo certain mods in a way that you wouldn't be able to before, or that you would have cooler combinations in some situations. So this solution essentially solves all the problems I mentioned about the artifact mods being too intrusive. This sort of makes the artifact a cherry on top situation. It's not this thing that's breaking into your build and disrupting your loadout, however it may be within each given season. This also really, it frees up like what you can do with the current mod system on your armors. Very little has to be changed here. I feel like this would be the easiest solution for Bungie to actually implement. Another idea I've sort of been thinking about is the idea that armor could get one seasonal artifact mod slot. And basically all this would be is a 4th or 5th mod slot that is just for artifact mods. This would be subtle changes to the artifact mods in such that you would still have them restricted to whatever piece, like your class item, your arms, your chest piece, helmet, you could still have that restriction. You could still have the cost of mods, i.e. the balancing out of like being able to double up on mods and stuff like that. And then you could also still have the freedom of doing the current system where if you wanted to, say, load up on 3 champion mods, so like, let's say there's a special primary and heavy, champion mod that you want to have selected, you could put all those 3 because you could do the normal 2 that we have now, and then you could do the 3rd in the artifact mod. I mean, basically, it would just be an additional slot. This would free up people's builds, it would not disrupt your build as much, and it would give people the option to still go overboard if they really wanted to. It's not like you're adding this and then only limiting 1 artifact mod to each armor piece. It's not like you're restricting them to only this slot. But now this slot would only take artifact mods, so it also wouldn't give you this advantage of like, oh, I can do like 3 of this normal mod and I'm good to go. There would be some balancing issues with that would need to be looked in, but you wouldn't be able to do that in this system. And the third solution, this is something I've really been passionately thinking about recently, and this is something I think would be the most successful as far as fixing armor and builds and mods and stuff like that. And basically, it's just to allow any mod go anywhere within a given armor piece. So let's say that you have gloves, right? You can put fastball on your gloves in the middle 2 columns currently. In this new system, you could put fastball in any of the 4 slots, or any of the 5 on raid armor. Now, this is something I want to get back to, but raid armor would be significantly better than normal armor in this situation. So basically, the only limiting factor would be the cost of the mods to be applied. There's many, many times that I would have loved to run different 4th column perks, so the combat mods, as Bungie calls them. I would love to put multiple of those on a single piece, or maybe I have free mod capacity, like energy on an armor piece, and I can double up on like discipline stats. The whole point here is to basically be a free market of where you can assign your mods, and this would create really interesting builds. Now, this might be not ever implementable because of Bungie recently talking about like, oh, characters are getting too many perks active at once, the game can't handle it, so it needs to be limited. Now, I understand that, I hear that, but I really don't care. I think this is the best solution. And what I mean by I don't care is like, if Bungie really wanted to get something to work, they have talented people, they could get it to work, they could find out a solution. And the reason I think this is probably the best solution to this is because this does everything. It allows Bungie to have mods and like have the cost of mods still be there. It allows them to balance through the cost of mods. This allows Bungie to let you choose every mod unlocked on the artifact. It allows us to have any sort of build we want. It allows us to get crazy with our builds with Charged with Light, Elemental Wells, Warmind Cells. And this helps with the third point I'm going to mention in this video. But this would basically be this would be like Armor 3.0 essentially. It's like, okay, Armor 2.0 introduced modding and more player input. Armor 3.0 really lets that loose, opens the door, opens the floodgate. Players can do anything. Let the free market of mod distribution decide what people are going to do. If someone wants to get that tier 10 intellect, discipline, and recovery or whatever, let them make that decision. Allowing any mod to go any location allows people's decisions to be the most impactful, because they can say, okay, well, I don't have the distribution on my armor that I want, but I do have enough capacity to put on like triple discipline mods and something else. That would be 10 capacity. And like I was saying, to raid armor has extra slots. Currently, it has the extra slot for raid perks. But currently, raid perks are completely and utter garbage and useless. They're so pointless. There are like 2 raid mods that are good. It's the Garden of Salvation mod that lets you deal more damage to the boss, and then the Volta Glass mod that lets you debuff enemies when you're standing near plates. Those are like the 2 useful raid mods, ignoring the Last Wish, like old school Taken mods that were actually very useful because you could use them, aka outside of the raid. Which, that's the problem with the current raid mods, is they're designed for the raids, and they cost energy. There's so many problems with the raid mods, I don't even want to get into that. But this solution would basically elevate raid armor to another level. Currently, it really doesn't have that. Okay, Master Vogue, you can get better stat rolled armor. Okay, I'll give you that. But stats are not that impactful. Now they can be like the difference between 0 and 100 is very impactful, but the difference between like 80 and 100 is not that impactful as far as breaking the game. You know, someone could win in a Crucible match because they have higher discipline than you, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's gunplay that's going to win in that Crucible match. Yes, they're going to get an advantage, but stats are not that impactful to the game. And, you know, that's another discussion for another time about stats in general, but if a free market economy system was implemented for the mods, then we would see really interesting builds and we would see really fun play styles emerge. It'd be dynamic gameplay systems that would come out of this. Alright, on to my second pain point with mods. There's almost no consistency between mods. I'm going to keep this part short, but basically it's simple to look at certain mods. There are certain mods that people use and there are certain mods people do not use. For example, the Arc Warmind Cell mods. How many of you have ever noticed anyone ever using these mods? They're cool in concept, but they don't really work in in-game content. They don't really scale up in higher difficulty content. Look at how many people actually go out of their way to make a good Charged with Light build. What about an Elemental Well build? Not many people get engaged in these systems because most people want a simple solution to a simple answer. Most people want to throw on high energy fire and taking charge. That, like, what else can I say? That's what most people do. Most people don't dedicate the time to make a build. And that's because most mods are not useful. Most people look at the Elemental Well mods and they're like, okay, well, these aren't very good. I'm not going to use them. Why would I swap off high energy fire? It's just free damage. More damage is good. Go burr. Now, I understand that mindset. It's simple. It's fast. It's easy and efficient. You don't have to change up any mods. But, like, it gets to a point where people don't want to try something new because they're just, like, content where they are, because there's no reason to try anything new, because most mods are not going to be good. There are a handful of mods that are really good. Another example of a safe, easy bet that most people do is Protective Light. Most people don't even consider to get a ×5 Charged with Light protective build, because why would you? It by itself is a good mod. There's no incentive to get a ×5 Charged with Light build with that mod. And, you know, I understand it. If there's no incentive, people aren't going to do it. I fully understand. But what I'm saying is, like, having so many mods be bad disincentivizes people from experimenting, because people are going to get this impression that most mods are just not worth the while when you have these 3 mods or whatever, these handful of mods that are really, really good. There's really only one way to solve this mod problem, and it's mostly just looking at the books, looking at the mods, going over them, rebalancing all of them in the current state of the game. I think the problem is most of these mods were built with the mindset of sunsetting is going to go away, it's going to make this armor irrelevant, therefore these mods will slowly phase out of the game. But, you know, sunsetting, as we all know, is gone, which is good. And also, these mods shouldn't go anywhere either. Like, mods with Armor 2.0 was one of the best things Destiny's ever seen. We actually get some build crafting into the game. But what I'm suggesting is Bungie needs to look at these mods and buff the bad mods. They need to remove the penalties and possibly even remove the benefits. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but I think the mods should just be chosen for their effect. You shouldn't be choosing elemental charge mods or Charged with Light mods because they have a passive that gives you 20 mobility and 20 strength. Like, you should be using it for the Charged with Light aspect. Nobody uses those mods for the actual Charged with Light aspects. Like, people are using them for the passives, Bungie. I think they're well aware of the mod situation, but I think they don't really care that much because the player base doesn't really care that much. Most people aren't really into build crafting in Destiny, and I get that. It's not the crowd for that concept of a game. Most people don't really care about builds because most of the game does not need or incentivize builds. And the third problem with mods is synergizing with teammates is almost impossible. And what I mean by this is it's really difficult for you to actually build together as a unit. Because if you're doing like Elemental Well stuff, everyone has to be doing it, really. If you're doing Charged with Light, that's more of an individualistic one, and there's not much to do with your teammate on that. And then Warmind Cell stuff is like, that's for everyone, but everyone has to focus into Warmind Cell mods. So the problem here is that you have ownership. Do the other players actually own the mods individually? You have armor element. are your teammates going to be able to apply said mod to gain whatever benefit and synergize with whatever you're using? And then the actual like cost of going in and changing your armor, not literally just the glimmer cost, but like the cost of like, okay, I gotta change this armor piece to this element, or I don't have any upgrade modules, so I have to go change the armor piece entirely. And doing that changes my stats, which kind of throws off the build. And it's like, all that headache, most people just avoid it. And honestly, like, it's really hard to get people to do it, to like actually play into each other. But when you do end up playing into each other's builds, the game starts flowing a lot more phenomenally in these harder content loops. An idea I've had about just the game and mods in general actually led me to think of a implementable solution for this problem, and that would basically be turning the class item, the mark, the bond, and the cloak into a team-based thing. So let's say I put Charge Harvester on my bond as a warlock. That's where when you pick up elemental wells, you get charged with light on them. If I have that on, then my whole team, whenever they pick up elemental wells, they'll get charged with light. And, I mean, little things, minutia here and there. Maybe it could be one mod slot on the bond that affects your entire team. Or maybe it could be every mod on there. I don't know. Like, that's not the big picture. The big picture is that there needs to be some way of blending playstyles and builds more easily with mods. And there needs to be some sort of team cooperation, synergistically working together when it comes to this sort of thing. To the few that remain after watching this long video, I'd like to thank you for your patience and listening to my thoughts. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not like this video, please let me know why in the comments. If you want to see more content like this in the future, please consider subscribing. It'll help out a lot and mean a lot to me. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.